Hey writers, it's Megan from All Writers Welcome. Um, and today we're going to talk about writer's block. What do you do about it? And it looks like people already have some comments. Awesome. If you have a suggestion or strategy or a question, please leave it. And I'm not sure I'm going to do an accurate job of representing what people have written here because I'm kind of looking in the corner of my screen, but definitely we'll go over these. So the first thing I want to say about writer's block is that I really feel adamantly it's important not to just say I have writer's block and leave it at that. Because in my experience, for myself and in my experience working, coaching writers, I think that there are two kind of basic reasons that writer's block comes up. And one of them has to do with what you know, and the other one has to do with what you feel. And if you're going to move forward out of writer's block, the very first thing you have to do is identify, are you stuck because you don't know something, or are you stuck because of a mood or a mindset that you're in that requires some kind of shift? So that's the first thing. Just ask, why am I feeling stuck? And I think it's easier to start with the what you know piece, because sometimes the mindset piece hides behind that. For example, I might go, oh no, I know or I'm willing to write, but I just don't know what to write next. And then if I examine that and find, well, I really do have the information I need, the reason I'm not writing must have to do with mindset, and then I'll have to tackle the mindset. But our our mindset often hides behind the we don't know. Well, I don't know what to write next. So I guess my mindset's kind of whiny. That's how my mindset sounds. I hope yours doesn't sound that whiny. All right, so what can you do if you don't know? I just jotted down some of my favorite strategies, so I'm looking down at my notes. Okay, if it's about what you know, pull back and try free writing. That's my number one suggestion. Let your thoughts wander and just ask yourself what might happen in the scene and explore. And take the pressure off of working on your draft. If you've been doing the Make Time to Write challenge in the group, you saw that just a simple prompt like write an object-free write, or just the beginning of a scene can spark you. So here's a great strategy. Go pick up a book you love, flip through to a random place, take the beginning of a description or of a scene, copy down the first 50 words or so, and then free write it in a direction you want to go. That will be a way of just kind of like revitalizing your writing mojo. And then you can get into free writing for your story. So that'll actually kind of tackle a mindset piece and a knowledge piece. But stop and free write will get you more information. Make a table. If you are somebody who thinks graphically and you really like planning, make a table and put where you are right now, where you want to go, and map out the steps. You can do that in bullet points too. Stop and talk out your story. Talk it out to somebody else, talk it out to a recorder, talk it out to a voice typing software. Make sure that you just can tell what's going to happen next. And if you're able to do those things and you're still finding a writer's block, that means you've got a mindset issue. So I'm going to pause here and just share with you, let's see what Jap has said here. He says, you've just got to place at least one simple brick each day. It may feel like much of the time, but soon enough you have built an entire wall. Oh, I love that thinking. Sometimes we get writer's block not because we're not writing anything, but because we're not writing as much as we hoped we would. And let's face it, some days are just better than others, no matter what job you have. Some days you feel more focused than others. Attention and just emotional well-being, these things are not constant. We're not robots. Some days you're just tired. Some days you are just worn down by, I don't know, what's going on in the world or in your family. A thought is just kind of plaguing you and it's getting you down. We are not constant. So cut yourself some slack. I really love that approach. You're building brick by brick. If you got some writing done, you can congratulate yourself for that. And I don't mean lower your standards. I don't mean say, oh, well, if I just only wrote, 10 words, then I should feel great about myself and I'll forget about meeting my writing goals. What I mean is that it's not going to help to beat yourself up. You'll only make your writer's block worse if you're really negative on yourself. That's my experience anyway. I guess there are those who thrive on negativity. So I can't speak for everybody, but I know for myself, if I beat myself up about the goals I didn't reach, it doesn't incline me to work harder to reach them. Jeff also says it's better to do one sentence than no sentences. I absolutely agree. If you get something down, you're continuing building the habit. And this is kind of what I started out with, where I was saying what you want to do is figure out how you can move past writer's block, not simply because your goal is to get words on the page. I mean, that sounds kind of obvious. You know, I'm a writer. Of course, I want to be writing instead of being blocked from writing. But more specifically, I mean that writer's block can become a habit. We can sit down to write and we go, oh, I'm blocked. And because there's a name for it, we're tricked into thinking that that's an endpoint, right? It's like going to the doctor and the doctor says you have pneumonia. And you're like, oh, I got my diagnosis. Okay, now my work here is done. Well, no, then now you got to do whatever you do for pneumonia. What is it? You take antibiotics or you bed rest. You're not done once you get the diagnosis. Especially because you have to figure out which of these two paths to pursue. So I just walked you through some of the knowledge pieces, how you can know more about your story so that you continue moving forward. And now I want to talk about the mindset pieces, because these are more sinister. They tend to hide, they sneak up on us. If you're finding that you're procrastinating a lot, if you're not in your writing space, you keep finding yourself other places doing other things, it's time to really re-examine your goals. So that would be the first thing, is get in touch with your why for writing. What is your motivation, and be really clear on that. I did a whole video about procrastination, and your why, your motivation plays a really big role in that, but it'll be a lot harder to fix the habit of fighting yourself on writing if you don't have a clear goal. And that might be a really big picture thing, like why you want to write in a broader sense, or it might be a smaller goal, like, oh wait, I'm trying to finish this particular chapter. All right, so a really simple tool is the Pomodoro Technique. That is setting a timer and working for 25 minutes and then taking a short break. And the magic of setting a timer is that it's counting. It's like having somebody look over your shoulder. And it really inspires you not to get up, not to try doing something else. So think about putting a little kid to bed, and some of you have children, and we've all been children. And here's a common scene: mom or dad or grandma or caregiver tucks in the child. Maybe there's a story, and have the last glass of water, and okay, good night, we love you. And then the adult leaves the room. And, between 30 seconds and a minute and a half later, the child comes out, oh, I can't sleep. Really? Because I don't think you've been trying long enough to determine you can't sleep, right? And we know this as adults, but think about that in your own writing process. Does that happen to you where you go, oh, I can't write right now? Well, the Pomodoro Technique, you're setting a timer. You're at least going to try to write for the next 25 minutes. And 25 minutes is a short enough time that it feels doable. You go, if I'm just doing this for 25 minutes, then I get a break. But it's a long enough time that you'll actually get a chance to really try writing. It's not the getting out of bed immediately thing. So that's one of my favorite things. The Pomodoro Technique is like having somebody look over your shoulder, but if you really want somebody looking over your shoulder, try co-working. This might be going to a coffee shop with friends and doing work. This might be going to a co-working space. This might be scheduling Skype calls with people in your friend network, in your writing network. If you know other people who work from home during the day, they don't have to be writing. Maybe you know somebody who runs a business. Schedule a time on the calendar and say, all right, from 10 to 11 a.m., we're going to get on a Skype call. We're going to each say what our goals are. Then we're going to put our microphones on mute and we're going to work. And I tell you, it'll be a lot harder to open up Twitter or to check your email when you know there's somebody else there. It's this really important accountability piece. We're social creatures. We don't like to let people down. So instead of trying to be your own accountability partner, let an actual real life human be your accountability partner. My other favorite strategy for changing that mindset is using your calendar. If you're working on a project and you have a deadline, whether that's a hard deadline because it needs to go out to other people, or it's a deadline that you've set, when you can see the deadline, then you can start dividing up the work you're going to do on those different days. And depending on how you feel about planning, that might not be down to the minute details. But if you've planned it's going to take you 8 weeks to get through your draft, and then you are a week and a half in and you haven't done any writing, well, that means the remaining 6.5 weeks, you're just piling up more work for yourself, right? So you're pushing things forward for your future self, which is another accountability piece, strangely, but it's kind of externalizing your future self. Hi, Nicole. It's kind of externalizing your future self and saying like, oh, now that person's workload is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And again, we're social creatures. We don't like to disappoint. So if you kind of externalize the you of the future and say, now that person, I'm giving her all of this extra work, boy, she's not going to be happy with me. That can be a way of discouraging yourself from doing that. So Nicole, do you have a favorite strategy for dealing with writer's block? Do you have a question about writer's block? Jap has another suggestion. He said, if I'm sitting down ready to work and not feeling it, I'll commit to something ridiculously easy, such as one paragraph or even one sentence. Absolutely, right? The floss one tooth method. Actually, that's something I got from one of our group members, Christian Gratan, who's a photographer. And we were talking about doing hard things. And he said, just floss one tooth. And it's so funny because, of course, if you floss one, well, you've already got the dental floss in your hand and you're right there. And of course, you're going to floss the rest of your teeth. But you tell yourself it's just the one, and then it's easier to get started. Ooh, Nicole's saying she likes to listen to music. Yeah, I'm a big fan of making it as fun as possible. Feel free to laugh at how silly this is, but when I'm going to work on a big project, I try to make it a party for myself. I'll often wear, like favorite earrings. I will sometimes sit down and paint my fingernails, not after I've gotten started, not as a procrastination, not in my sacred writing time, but ahead of it, right? So I have my writing time and it's going to start at this time on my calendar. Moving up to that, I put myself in kind of fun party mode, because who wants to sit down to a task that's going to be awful? Right? Like nobody wants to go to show up at the event that's going to be grueling. But if you can make it fun, if you can invite yourself to the party of writing. Nicole also says, I do research and get other people's opinions. Yeah, depending on where you are in your draft, that can be a wonderful form of active rest. And active rest is so powerful for writers. Active rest, if you've ever done like weightlifting and then cardio at the gym, or if you did like a set of arms and a set of legs, you have done active rest. In fact, it is something that creative people do all the time, and the term may not be used, but it's really powerful. And it means that instead of having to stop on the task overall, you say, well, I'm kind of fatigued in this area, but I'm going to now work on something that's still part of the project. And the one thing I would just make sure to add to that is, if you're going to do research, or if you're going to get other people's opinions as part of your writing time, set either a time limit or a goal or both, so that it doesn't become procrastination. Because that can be one of those places. I know personally, I can go, oh, I'm doing this and it's part of my book, but really it's a way to put off, or it's a way to procrastinate. So I know I have to police myself for that. I usually use a timer. I say I've got these 15 minutes to do it. I'm also just a very distractible person. So sometimes I won't be intentionally procrastinating, but I'll go start researching one thing and it leads to this. And this is just how the internet is, right? One link leads you to another, and then you just keep going and going and going. Okay. All right. Nicole, you want to chat on Facebook Messenger? All right. Hit me up if you've got a particular question. There's this lovely what I think is a great example of active rest, and it comes from Gever Tully, who's this phenomenal man. He runs Brightwork School in San Francisco. It started as a camp, and it is building and designing and engineering for kids. And he says that he does a great TED Talk, and he says there's this moment in every camp he runs where the kids who are, building roller coasters and boats and all kinds of cool stuff come up against a design problem. Like they're like, oh, how can we get the roller coaster to have enough momentum so it goes over this hill? And they stand and they look at it, and then they go get the art supplies, which he has on hand, and they start painting and they start decorating. And it looks like they're giving up on the project, but really they're doing active rest. And this is the other important thing about giving yourself a little bit of space. Sometimes sometimes the harder you try to think through a problem, the less insight you have on it. And this is just the nature of our brains. Sometimes our best thoughts get scared away by putting too much light and too much focus on them. So what Nicole is saying about going and doing research might also be about just taking the pressure off. And then as you're a little bit distracted, your unconscious mind is still working on whatever the issue was that made you have to stop writing. And then it'll coalesce, and all of a sudden you'll come back and you'll go, oh, I know, this is exactly what should happen in the scene. Let's see. Jap, you had another comment. Jap is saying you like to listen to music as well, as long as it's not kind of too intense, because it's hard to do your best thinking. And it's stuff with words makes it more challenging. Yeah, I have a classical music station. I have a box station on my Pandora that is specifically for when I am working on things that take a lot of focus. But for some people, that's a really great space filler, so that you, again, don't feel like you're staring really hard at your book and making it nervous, making all your best ideas go away. So I know that we all experience writer's block differently. I know that we all have different strategies for addressing it. If you've got a great strategy, let's keep the conversation going, throw it in the comments. But what I would really love to encourage all of you to do when you get that feeling of writer's block is very first thing to say, how can I, I've diagnosed it, but how can I move forward? Am I stuck because I don't know what to write? Or am I stuck because I don't want to write anymore, or I don't know how I can continue? Because even just knowing that, you can get into our group even and say, oh, you guys, I'm stuck because I need an idea. Here's what's happening in the scene. What do you think should happen next among these options? Or you guys, I'm stuck. I need encouragement. Who's got a great strategy? How can I get myself wanting to write again, which is sometimes the challenge. All right, it doesn't look like there are any more questions or comments for now, but again, let's keep this conversation going. I think that there are so many different ways to deal with this, and I think that the more we put in, the more we can try. Like the more suggestions people throw out, the more we can try, and the more we'll all be writing. So I love that. I love that possibility. All right, thanks for joining me. I will catch you guys in the group. And happy writing. Bye.